And this underrated criteria is called usable space. Hi everyone, in this video, we're going to talk about the fifth criteria, and it's also one of the most overlooked criteria, and it's our last criteria when it comes to choosing a property for industrial property investments. If you've missed our earlier videos where we went through the other 4 criteria, feel free to check them out in the link in the description and in the comments. Hi, I'm Jermaine.
And I'm Sean,
co-founders of Quadrant. In our series of videos, we'll be sharing with you guys property investment knowledge, strategies, and tips to help you become a better property investor. So hit the subscribe button and stay updated to our latest videos. And this underrated criteria is called usable space.
So let's talk about usable space. As investors, most of the time when we want to buy a property, we use this matrix called PSF per square feet, right? Now, when we look at PSF, it doesn't actually tell us is there like a balcony involved, what's the livable space or what's the usable spaces in it, right?
You don't even know how the entire unit looks like, whether there's a balcony or aircon ledge until you get there.
Yeah, and therefore, looking at only PSF can be quite misleading, right? Without the clear understanding if is there fully usable space or not. Now let's put it into a residential property context, right? Usable space in industrial property terms is almost the same as livable space in a Singapore residential term, right? How much can you use, right? When you buy a unit, you want to ensure that most of it you're able to use. You don't want to have huge aircon ledges. You don't want to have huge balcony where you rarely use as well.
And so Sean, coming back to industrial properties, right? As a tenant, I don't want to, use a space and rent it, right? When only I can use half. Maybe half is the balcony and half the space is really usable. And think about it, if you're a tenant, right, you wouldn't want to pay more. But yet, on the other hand, if you're actually the landlord of this place, the owner of this place, you still need to pay for higher property tax and management fees while receiving a lower rental, which is really not the best kind of investment.
You must understand from the developer's point of view, they want to have as much square feet as possible to sell to people, right? And therefore, it's very common for a project to have additional balcony space, additional airspace, even car park space, or whatever void space that you can think of. And the craziest thing is people do pay for this space because why? They do not have that clarity in terms of what is usable or not.
There are 3 things we want to consider when it comes to usable space, and we're going to talk about A, B, C. And the first A is airspace.
What is airspace? Airspace typically is when you go into a unit and you see a particular unit with very high ceiling. And you're actually paying for this very high ceiling. So the only time you will really only use this space is when you actually stack up your goods all the way to the ceiling, and that is where you make your money worthwhile.
Yeah, and officially, inside the floor plan, this airspace is actually called void space. I think some very creative people would think of building a mezzanine so that they can have higher rentals. So Sean, you actually told me before that there's 2 kinds of approvals that an industrial property can get. What are those?
Yeah, we are able to get BCA approval, we are able to get like fire safety approval, but one thing that you will never get is a URA permanent approval to actually have this mezzanine. They might grant you this temporary approval, but what temporary means that they also have the right to come in and tell you to tear down this entire mezzanine.
And why, as an investor, right, we don't want to actually buy something that may or may not have the final URA approval, and like that we are actually being stuck to this particular property, which is less than ideal. And B stands for balcony. Now, I personally don't buy any balcony units because imagine this, a tenant comes in, they will negotiate with me to have a lower rental because they don't use the balcony, and it's less than ideal. However, I would dare say that most balcony units are still acceptable.
And when it comes to buying of such balcony unit, a pro tip for you guys is that to actually look at or find what's the rental that you're able to get for such balcony units. And once you're able to find out the rental, you'll know how much to actually negotiate as a price discount from the seller.
And C stands for car park. It is when the unit has a car park directly outside the unit, which is part of the strata area as well. And when I see this unit, guys, I run far away.
Now, there are units that with shutter just outside the unit, alright, and the car park is within the unit itself. For those, I think it's fine. Right, but we are talking about those that are outside the unit, and for that, right, there are other tenants that actually pay for such units. Yes. Right, because it's still an easy access for unloading, loading, right? However, such tenants are limited, right? And therefore, most tenants in the market will not really understand the benefit of having car park as a part of the strata.
Again, they will negotiate with you for lower rentals, and at the same time, you still pay property tax, maintenance fees on all the unusable space outside the unit, which is not ideal for investors.
Yeah, and therefore, not worth it.
Don't buy. There you have it. These are the 3 things when it comes to usable space. So your A stands for airspace, B stands for balcony, and C stands for car park.
There's some industrial building, alright, with the whole development actually having car park plots and car park space itself. And that is still easy to identify what is the price point to actually enter, because everyone would have already known that there's a car park unit or car park lot within this entire strata. Now, the tricky part is when there are buildings with multiple configuration. Yes, guys. There are those that with balcony, there are those that with car park, alright, and there are those that is fully usable space. And that gets very tricky to actually identify how much you pay for each of these units, and that's where a lot of investors gets burnt.
In summary, I think discipline is key. We really need to stick to these criteria, and the reason why during the pandemic and during this entire time that our portfolio is almost at a full 100% occupancy, right, is because we really stick through to these criteria. Is it easy to pass all of these criteria? No! When we put in the effort and we put in once, then only it increases our chance of having good tenants that actually pay on time and have very high occupancy, and that gives us a crisis-proof strategy. And in that case, right, discipline is really key. And I know that during this time or during any time, different people will come to us with different objectives, different agendas, and they will say like, oh, you can buy based on very high rental yield and this unit is different and things like that. But if you stick true to the criteria, then you give yourself a very, very good chance at succeeding in being a good property investor. As a new investor, buy something that appeals to the mass market. Don't buy units that only appeals to a small group of people. Like for example, when you buy food factories or first floor industrial units, or even the units with car park space, can those make money? Maybe, but your probability of success gets even lesser.
And when we look at industrial property as a whole, right, it's very easy to conclude and say that, you know what, industrial property cannot make money or very hard to rent out. Right? But because almost people do not have the context of these 5 criteria that we have created, alright, through our experience. Yeah. So the key thing is this: understand the full criteria, alright, and really do your research and really up your knowledge in this industrial property space before you even consider investing in it. Because what you want to do is to reduce your risk so that you have a highest probability of actually making money in investment.
So that's it, guys. Here's iQuadrant's 5 criteria for industrial properties. And by the way, there are different criteria when it comes to residential properties as well. So to stay tuned for more of our videos, remember to like and subscribe to our channel. And I'll see you with more property strategies and tips. See you in the next videos. Bye!